In the summer of 1518, a woman started sporadically dancing uncontrollably in the streets of Strasbourg in the Holy Roman Empire. She danced for over a week straight with no explanation as to why. As she did, other people that witnessed her also started to join in dancing in an apparent state of hypnosis. Within days, there were over 30 people continuously dancing, and no one really knows why. They would reportedly dance with their arms thrashing around violently until they collapsed and died from exhaustion, a heart attack, a stroke, starvation, or dehydration. This also reportedly continued to go on for almost 3 months and claimed almost 400 victims. This was deemed the dancing plague. No one knows exactly why this started happening, but there are several theories out there, including mass psychogenic illness, a protest, a form of worship towards Saint Vitus, and even the theory of ergot poisoning. Join me as we delve into this mystery and attempt to dig up the truth of what really happened. And welcome to Dredge a Reality, where we talk about crazy facts, mysteries, and scary stories we've dredged from reality. Please subscribe to our channel, hit the bell notification and the like button so you don't miss any content we've dredged up for you. Now let's get to digging. On July 14th, 1518, in Strasbourg, Holy Roman Empire, which is now modern-day France, a woman named Frau Troffea was reportedly seen dancing through the streets of the city with no music. She was dancing sporadically with her arms thrashing around violently. She was seemingly unable to stop and continued for hours until she took a break, but she resumed the next day. This time, dancing for a week without stopping. Her behavior attracted onlookers, some of who joined her either voluntarily or as if compelled. It was like people were being hypnotized and couldn't help but to spontaneously start erratically dancing non-stop. Over the following days, more and more people joined in on the dancing. Within a week, dozens of individuals were dancing uncontrollably. By August of the same year, so less than a month later, the dancing plague had reportedly claimed over 400 victims, but exact numbers are unknown. Many people would keep dancing, seemingly unable to stop, collapsing from exhaustion, only to eventually rise and continue dancing. The victims' movements were described as spastic with many convulsions. Their bodies were usually drenched in sweat. It was also reported that their eyes were vacant and expressionless. Their feet would get swollen from the constant dancing and eventually bleed through their shoes. Many danced until they succumbed to strokes, heart attacks, sheer exhaustion, starvation, or even dehydration. It's reported that there were up to 15 deaths a day during the plague's peak. But the exact number of deaths is unclear due to records being sparse and often lacking precise historical details. In late July, right around the peak of the dancing plague, Strasbourg city authorities started to notice the erratic dancing in its growing numbers. This was getting out of hand, and authorities needed to address the situation and figure out what was going on. Initially, authorities tried to make sense of the event, consulting local physicians and religious leaders. The city's physicians attributed the outbreak to overheated blood, a theory rooted in the Humoral medical system of the time. To explain the Humoral theory of medicine, it's an ancient medical concept that originated in Greece and influenced medical practice for over 2,000 years, from antiquity through the Middle Ages and into the Renaissance. The theory posited that the human body was governed by 4 bodily fluids, or humors, and that the balance or imbalance of these humors determined the person's health, temperament, and personality. The 4 humors included blood, associated with the heart and the element air, phlegm, associated with the brain and lungs and the element water, yellow bile, associated with the liver and the element fire, and black bile, associated with the spleen and the element earth. A healthy body was thought to have a perfect balance of all 4 humors. Illness or disease was believed to result from an excess or deficiency of one or more humors. For example, in this theory, too much blood caused fever or restlessness. Excess phlegm resulted in lethargy or respiratory issues. Too much yellow bile led to anger or digestive problems, and excess black bile caused melancholy or depression. Physicians aimed to restore the balance among the humors using various methods, including bloodletting, removing blood via leeches or incisions, diet, prescribing foods and drinks thought to counteract excessive humors, like giving cooling foods for overheated blood. Other methods included purgation, inducing vomiting or bowel movements to remove excess bile or phlegm, bath and compresses used to cool or warm the body as needed, and herbal remedies, plants and herbs were matched to the qualities of the humors. The humoral theory influenced not only medicine, but also psychology, philosophy, and even art. It shaped beliefs about personality traits and persisted as the dominant medical framework until the 17th century, when scientific advancements in anatomy, microbiology, and chemistry led to its decline. Today, the humoral theory is recognized as a historical medical concept that laid the groundwork for later developments in understanding health and disease, despite being scientifically inaccurate. Physicians thought the best way to rid the overheated blood was for the afflicted to dance themselves free of it, so officials started building stages and refurbishing guild halls to accommodate the dancing. Officials hired musicians and professional dancers to accompany the afflicted. They also hired strong people to help exhausted people stand upright and continue dancing. They thought structured dancing would allow them to release the excess heat in their blood. Unfortunately, this approach backfired as it seemed to intensify the outbreak, with more people joining in. Many people started dancing in fear that it was a punishment from Saint Vitus. They thought it would make them free of sin to join in on the dancing. Just a little history on Saint Vitus if you didn't already know. Saint Vitus was a young Christian martyr believed to have lived in the late 3rd or early 4th century during the Roman Empire. According to legend, he converted to Christianity as a child and suffered persecution under the Emperor Diocletian for refusing to renounce his faith. St. Vitus was reportedly subjected to various tortures, including being boiled alive. He is said to have miraculously survived these ordeals, solidifying his reputation as a powerful intercessor. Over time, legends surrounding St. Vitus grew, and he became associated with miraculous healings, particularly for people suffering from strange, uncontrollable movements. St. Vitus was venerated in medieval Europe as a patron saint of dancers, actors, and those suffering from neurological disorders. He is also said to protect against lightning strikes, animal attacks, and oversleeping. He is one of 14 holy helpers, a group of saints believed to intercede in cases of specific illness and hardships. St. Vitus became linked to a condition later called St. Vitus's dance, a neurological disorder causing jerking and uncontrollable movements. Medieval Europeans believed such afflictions were caused by his curse if they had offended him or failed to honor him properly. The idea of a curse from St. Vitus resonated deeply in the context of the 1518 dancing plague, as the afflicted appeared to be cursed to dance uncontrollably. At this point, the dancing outbreak was getting so out of hand, Strasbourg authorities had to take more desperate measures. They decided the best approach was to make dancing illegal. Authorities issued decrees banning public dancing in the city. This included not only the dancers afflicted by the plague, but also other public dancing, which they believed could exacerbate the phenomenon or trigger new cases. But they even took it a step further. Music, which could encourage or sustain dancing, was also banned. Musicians were forbidden to play in public spaces or gatherings, so absolutely no dancing or playing music whatsoever. These measures reflected a shift in their approach, from facilitating dancing as a supposed cure to suppressing it altogether. Authorities believed dancing might spread further, either through physical proximity or psychological suggestion. This is what led them to outlaw the activity or anything related completely. The outbreak was also interpreted by authorities as a spiritual affliction caused by the wrath of St. Vitus. Authorities believe only religious intervention could cure the affliction, and banning dancing may have been seen by authorities as a way to prevent further offense to the saint. Those who were caught dancing after this point were relocated to a place where they could rest or receive spiritual remedies. Many dancers were transported to a nearby shrine of St. Vitus in Saverne, about 30 miles from Strasbourg. At the shrine, the afflicted participated in rituals believed to cure the curse of St. Vitus. Priests performed blessings, prayers, and ceremonies to lift the perceived curse. The dancers were given red shoes that had been blessed to wear to the shrine. They were blessed by being sprinkled with holy water and painted with crosses on the tops and the soles, which they were instructed to wear as a symbolic act of devotion. They were also made to hold crosses in their hand along with incense. Some dancers were taken to churches, monasteries, or other sacred spaces within Strasbourg. These locations were used for spiritual cleansing, where afflicted individuals were prayed over and blessed by clergy. It's reported that they were encouraged to fast or rest, aligning with both spiritual and medical practices at the time. The dancing eventually ended up dying down. By September 1518, around 2 months after the dancing plague outbreak, things finally subsided and went back to normal. The exact date of the outbreak ending is unclear, but it was sometime in early September. The dancing plague ended through a combination of religious, psychological, and social interventions, along with the natural exhaustion of the afflicted. Medieval authorities and the rest of the populace believed the cure came from appeasing St. Vitus. This was a relief as society could return to somewhat normalcy. But modern historians and scholars have some different theories on what happened. Let's delve into some of those theories and see if we can uncover the truth of what really happened. One popular theory suggests the dancers were suffering from ergot poisoning or ergotism, a condition caused by consuming ergot, a toxic fungus that grows on damp rye and other grains during warm, damp conditions. Ergotism has two main forms: convulsive ergotism, characterized by muscle spasms, hallucinations, seizures, and mental disturbances. The other form is called gangrenous ergotism, causing blood vessel constriction and leading to tissue death, but this form is less relevant to the dancing plague. The convulsive form of ergotism presents symptoms that might resemble what happened during the dancing plague, including involuntary movements, uncontrollable spasms, and twitching could have been misinterpreted as dancing. Hallucinations is another symptom of the convulsive form of ergotism. The fungus produces lysergic acid, a precursor to LSD, which can cause vivid hallucinations and alter mental states. Ergot poisoning could also lead to confusion, irrational behavior, and frenzied activity, aka delirium. These are some symptoms that could have started the dancing plague. The summer of 1518 in Strasbourg was unusually wet, creating ideal conditions for ergot to thrive on rye crops. Poor harvest and food shortages may have forced people to eat contaminated grain. Also, other outbreaks of ergotism known as St. Anthony's Fire were documented in Europe, where people suffered from bizarre physical and psychological symptoms as well. Some of the arguments against ergot poisoning theory are ergot poisoning usually causes severe physical weakness, seizures, and pain, making it unlikely for individuals to dance continuously for days or weeks. Ergot poisoning typically affects people who consume the contaminated grain, but the dancing plague seemed to spread socially and psychologically, not through food. Other signs of ergotism, such as gangrene or widespread convulsions unrelated to dancing, were not reported during the outbreak. Another argument is the strong connection to mass hysteria and cultural beliefs about St. Vitus, suggesting that the cause was more psychological than biological. The ergot theory remains an intriguing possibility, but some consider it insufficient to explain the full scale and nature of the dancing plague of 1518. Another theory is mass psychogenic illness, aka MPI or mass hysteria. It occurs when a group of people simultaneously exhibit similar physical symptoms with no discernible biological cause. It is often triggered by intense psychological stress, cultural or social influences, or a shared belief system that reinforces the behavior. The dancing plague occurred during an extreme period of hardship in Strasbourg, which created widespread stress and anxiety. The region had recently experienced poor harvest, leading to hunger and malnutrition. Epidemics such as smallpox and syphilis were ravaging Europe at the time, and many people lived in extreme poverty with few resources to survive. Also, the deeply religious population believed in divine punishment and curses, including the curse of Saint Vitus, which was said to compel victims to dance uncontrollably if they offended him. Many people believe they were actually cursed by Saint Vitus, the patron saint of dancers. This cultural belief made individuals more likely to interpret any unusual sensations or movements as Saint Vitus's curse, possibly triggering more dancing. Once Frau Troffea began dancing in July of 1518, others who witnessed her might have subconsciously caught the behavior in a social contagion. Seeing others dance could have reinforced the idea that they too might be afflicted, creating a feedback loop. These factors likely created an environment ripe for collective psychological breakdowns. This is consistent with the documented cases of MPI where symptoms spread rapidly through suggestion and imitation. The afflicted were swept up in a state of dissociation or altered consciousness, where they danced uncontrollably for hours or days. Over time, physical exhaustion, dehydration, and malnutrition compounded the symptoms, further trapping individuals in the behavior. Other outbreaks of dancing mania occurred in Europe between the 14th and 17th centuries, often under similar social and cultural pressures. Unlike conditions like ergot poisoning, MPI doesn't rely on external toxins or infections. It arises purely from psychological and social factors. Some arguments against MPI are, unlike typical cases of MPI, the afflicted in the dancing plague reportedly danced for hours, days, or even weeks, sometimes to the point of death from exhaustion or dehydration. This extreme physical endurance is difficult to reconcile with MPI, as such prolonged activity would normally result in physical collapse much sooner. Other documented cases of MPI, such as feigning or laughing outbreaks, are usually short-lived and less physically demanding, making the dancing plague a unique and unexplained anomaly. Critics also argue that attributing the event solely to MPI overlooks the significant role of religious rituals and beliefs in shaping behavior. Many participants likely believed they were fulfilling a divine or spiritual purpose, not just responding to psychological distress. While there are still many unanswered questions, the MPI theory remains a popular interpretation for this bizarre historical phenomenon. Of course, most of the populace of Strasbourg in 1518 believe it had something to do with Saint Vitus, but there are also many modern people that believe the theory as well. Medieval folklore held that individuals who angered Saint Vitus could be cursed to dance uncontrollably as punishment. This belief created a self-fulfilling prophecy. Those who feared the curse might have psychologically or physically manifested symptoms, thinking they were afflicted. In 16th century Strasbourg, faith played a central role in daily life. People often interpreted natural disasters, diseases, and unusual events as a sign of divine punishment or spiritual affliction. The dancing was widely seen as a punishment for sinfulness or moral failings. Clergy and city authorities viewed it as a sign of collective guilt requiring spiritual intervention. Dancers were thought to be possessed by a spirit or demon, which drove them to dance uncontrollably. This belief likely reinforced the behavior, as those afflicted felt unable to stop unless the spiritual cause was addressed. Some participants may have joined the dancing voluntarily, believing the dancing could act as a form of spiritual cleansing or appeasement of Saint Vitus. Arguments against religious fervor are it doesn't fully explain physical symptoms. While religious beliefs could explain the psychological triggers, it does not account for the extreme physical endurance, reported deaths, or prolonged duration of dancing. The religious fervor and spiritual interpretation of the dancing plague of 1518 highlights how deeply medieval society connected unusual events to divine or supernatural causes. The belief in Saint Vitus's curse likely contributed to the outbreak by creating psychological susceptibility and reinforcing communal behaviors. While it doesn't fully explain the phenomenon, the spiritual interpretation was central to how the event was understood and addressed at the time. The last theory is other types of neurological or medical conditions, such as Sydenham's chorea, which is also known as St. Vitus's dance. This condition is a neurological disorder characterized by involuntary jerking movements of the face, hands, and feet. It is often a complication of rheumatic fever caused by a streptococcal infection. The erratic dance-like movements of this condition resemble the uncontrollable motions described during the dancing plague. It typically affects children and adolescents, which aligns with some historical descriptions of the dancing mania. Some arguments against this theory is St. Vitus's dance is a medical condition that affects individuals, not groups, making it unlikely to explain the collective nature of the outbreak. The condition also doesn't cause the frenzied energy or prolonged endurance seen in the dancing plague, which goes against the afflicted dancing to their death. Epilepsy is another theory of a medical condition that could have caused the dancing plague, because some forms of epilepsy can involve convulsive movements resembling dancing. Religious or spiritual associations with epilepsy in the Middle Ages may have influenced perceptions of the afflicted as a curse. Arguments against this theory are epileptic seizures are typically short-lived and episodic, unlike the prolonged bouts of dancing reported in 1518, so the condition doesn't account for the social contagion aspect of the dancing plague. Also, it's highly unlikely that large groups of people would experience this together, unless possibly exposed to something that triggered it. The dancing plague miraculously stopped just 2 months after it started. No one knows exactly what caused it to start or stop. People have speculated for centuries. It doesn't help there are conflicting accounts on the information of the events. While much of what we know comes from historical chronicles and official documents, the accounts are often colored by religious, medical, and social perspectives of the 16th century, leading to challenges in interpreting them with certainty. But either way, it is still an actual event that happened in history. Different accounts may have different numbers or slightly different events, but the dancing plague of 1518 was a thing that truly no one knows the real reason why it started. So what do you think started the dancing plague of 1518? Do you think it was ergot poisoning caused by the crops that year? Do you think it was a mass psychogenic illness that affected everyone? Do you think it was some kind of religious reaction caused by the fear of a curse from St. Vitus? Or do you think it was another theory that I didn't go over? Let me know what you think in the comments below so we can attempt to dig up the truth of what really happened. Thanks so much for watching, and please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any reality I've dredged up for you. I'll see you next time with some more crazy facts, mysteries, and scary stories dredged from reality.